over the last couple of weeks, workers at the Frito-Lay plant in Topeka, Kansas, have been on strike. So now they're on strike because of terrible working conditions in the plant that actually makes a ton of our favorite snack foods, at least mine. And so they described working conditions as well as low pay, but working conditions that are absolutely horrifying. They range from extremely long shifts, nicknamed suicide shifts, to extremely hot and deadly temperatures inside the plant. So now you might be wondering, wait, suicide shift? What the hell is that? It's about as bad as it sounds. The suicide shifts are where workers will come in for 8 hours, then are forced to work 4 more hours of overtime, then are called 4 more hours early, called in 4 hours early, and then basically you're working a lot and you only have about 8 hours in between shifts. So it's like 16-hour days. That's horrible. When do you have time for anything but sleep? And do you even have time for sleep? Not really. Not a good night's rest. And now I understand that, like, because I remember I started working at a bumper factory way back when, in like 2004, and they were on 7/12s, and so I hired in at pretty much the end of it. So I had like 2 weeks, maybe, yeah, it's about two and a half weeks of solid 7/12s, and I was like, holy shit, this is bad. What day is it? It's not Friday. I haven't gotten paid. What day is it? You lose track of time. You don't get a lot of sleep. Luckily, I lived like 5 minutes away. But imagine if you have to travel like an hour, which some people do. And so 1 hour there, 1 hour back, 12-hour shifts, or in this case, 16-hour shifts. You get 6 hours to come home, do whatever you got to do, maybe catch a quick nap, and then you're back. You're back at work. You're basically living at work. And by the way, a lot of people who are working those 7/12s at the factory that I hired into, they were like, yeah, we lived in the parking lot. Like, we just camped out. I lived out of my car for like a month. I would go home, every once in a while to, go get more stuff or whatever, and take showers here at work, and that was it. Yeah, it's pretty terrible. Just absolutely awful. And now I also remember, by the way, the toll it takes. At another point in time, I was working. What was it? I was working at as a stocker at a store. I was actually in the back that was unloading the stuff to be stocked in the shelves, and I was also working at a water plant. So this was like an ice mountain plant, right? Bottled water. And so that was a 12-hour job. And then you had the 5-hour job, 5 to 6 hour, depending on how long it took to throw the truck. I did that for about 4 or 5 days straight. At some point, because I would go and do the truck at Meyer, and then I would go and do this, be an inspector at the Ice Mountain plant, and it would happen I would go right afterwards. So I did that for a few days in a row, and at some point I began to lose sense of reality. I was coming home one day, and I was seeing weird shit in the road. I was incredibly sleep deprived. It was dangerous. So I called in, and I said, I can't do this anymore. So and by the way, the water plant job was like a temporary. So that's why I went back to just doing the Meyer job. But anyway, it was horrifying, that condition. Working, those incredibly long shifts, it really messes with your head. It's terrible. And this is what these people were doing. They were working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, with people not having a day off in 5 months, weekends included. And so, again, that's horrible. That has a negative effect on everything. Now, Mark McCarter is a 59-year-old palletizer and union steward at the plant, who worked there for about 37 years, told Vice, quote, "It seems like I go to one funeral a year for someone who had a heart attack at work or someone who went home to their barn and shot themselves in the head or hung themselves." So understand that is a serious toll on people's mental health. Okay. Another worker, Samuel Huntsman, explained that the forced overtime interferes with your health and your household. It leads to fights in the shop floor. He adds, with workers getting into arguments because they're cranky and mad and tired. Others at the plant have spoken of divorces caused by the schedules, in addition to suicides. So that was the situation. Now, Frito-Lay, they could have alleviated that situation a couple of different ways, right? For one, they could have just not had those shifts. They could have given people the weekend, whatever, right? Or if they wanted to keep up production, they could hire people. But apparently they refused to hire people. The company apparently hasn't budged when other workers demanded that they get time off by Frito-Lay hiring more people. Now, of course, they couldn't hire more people because that would mean more expenses and less profit. We can't have that. And now another worker told their story and added, this is Sherry Renfro, one of the striking workers, in an open letter, saying, when a coworker collapsed and died, you had us move the body and put in another coworker to keep the line going. Hey, that person just keeled over and died. Move them out of the way, put another body in there. We got to keep the line moving. Can't shut it down for nothing. That's a Dickensian nightmare. That's a dystopia right there. And we're living in it right now. That's it. We're living in a fucking dystopia. This is not happening in a quote unquote third world country. It's happening here in the United States, in Kansas, in a major city. OSHA, by the way, and Frito-Lay says, no, that didn't actually happen. Fake news. OSHA is investigating that situation, an incident that took place in May in the facility, and has previously fined the plant for cases involving vehicular accidents from overwork, obviously, and amputations from machines. At the Topeka plant, production has only increased during the pandemic, whereas people were used to working overtime around the holidays. They say they are now being pushed to their limits year-round as people across the United States up their intake of products made, packaged, and shipped out of Topeka. Lay's potato chips, Tostitos, Cheetos, Sun Chips, Fritos, and Doritos. So there's a list of things that you shouldn't eat. Okay. The company made about $4.2 billion in sales. And that's responsible for a 14% spike in revenue for the parent company, PepsiCo, whose stock has gone up as a result. And now you would think, hey, look, the conditions are terrible. The overtime is horrifying, but surely they must be paying their workers well enough now, right? You would think. No. Mark Banaka, business manager for bakery, confectionery, and tobacco workers and grain millers local 218, the union that represents some 600 of the Topeka workers, tells Labor Notes, between all of those industries, Frito-Lay sits at the bottom of the ladder as far as wage scales. This is why the workers are demanding a minimum of a $1 to $2 an hour raises. Recent matters have only intensified the problems at the plant. For instance, while management could stay home during the pandemic, workers were unable to, obviously. Some say that received no hazard pay or bonuses, while others speak of receiving a meager extra $100 a week as temporary. And that's just for a few weeks. Now, during a particularly hot summer, the plant lacks air conditioning. According to McCarter, at 7 a.m., our warehouse is 100 degrees. We don't have air conditioning. We have cooks in the kitchen on the fryers. that are 130 to 140 degrees, making chips and sweating like pigs. Meanwhile, the managers are up in their office with air conditioning. Those conditions are what led workers to withdraw their labor in late June. Workers voted 353 to 30 in favor of authorizing a strike. I'd love to see who the 30 were. The work stoppage began on midnight of July 5th. I wonder if that was all like the people that could go into the air-conditioned office. So the result of this, by the way, is obviously support your workers, support labor. Don't buy the chips. Look, and this is me also like telling myself, don't buy the damn chips. I love chips. I'm kind of a fat guy. I love snack food. Don't buy it. I'm not going to buy it. Not until this is resolved. Not until people are paid a fair wage. Not until they get a goddamn air conditioner into the plant. Don't help the scabs. Don't buy the chips. Don't be a scab. In fact, here's what some of the workers say. Here's what the workers themselves that are striking are telling you or asking you to do. We would rather nobody buy Frito-Lay products. Fritos, Doritos, Tostitos, Funyuns, Cheetos, all those, while we're on strike. We make all those in Topeka. We would rather nobody buys PepsiCo products while we're on the line. PepsiCo, of course, being the owner of Frito-Lay. So, workers are also asking the public to call PepsiCo's board of directors to urge them to bargain a fair and reasonable contract. A local magazine, 785, has also set up a fund to help pay strikers' water utility bills. And that's what needs to happen. Support striking labor. Don't buy the chips. But more importantly, support unions. Understand that like unions have been crushed for their ability to do things like this, to organize strikes and general strikes and supporting striking workers. Without unions, without strike funds, workers are unable to sustain themselves through strikes. A strike that lasts 2 or 3 days, and then people got to go back because they got bills to pay and they can't afford to feed their kids. Well, that gives the employer all the leverage they need. They just have to wait them out. But if you have a robust union and a strike fund, then you can say, what now, right? Yeah, I guess you can go ahead and hire the scabs, but as far as the rest of us go, we're in strike. And we're here for the long haul until you come to the negotiating table. That's how it works. That's how it works. Okay? You've got to have that infrastructure and that support to get people through these strikes. And you can really expand that to if you're in support of a general strike, which I am. I'd love to see a general strike, but you have to have that infrastructure in place. And what's important to do is to build that. Unions served that function. Unions need to come back for exactly that reason and other reasons. So please, I implore you, fight for labor, fight to unionize if you're not. And I know that's a dangerous proposition. I know it's easy for me to say because a lot of people get fired for trying to support a union. And people are surrounded by, anti-union propaganda, like we saw with the Amazon, the warehouses. But you've got to try to get through to people. You have to. It's the only way that we can do that. So fight for the unions, except for police unions, because they suck. But if you keep fighting for labor, real labor, we can actually start to make some gains for the people, for all workers. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.